How are you doing, Zelda fanatics? HMK here with part 2 of a 3-part series that aims to tackle talking points of Breath of the Wild, where it stands among the Zelda series as the latest in the 3D open world Zelda, and how it can be applied to what is beyond the horizon for the series. While Breath of the Wild was heralded by many to be the best new entry into the series and that it sets a new standard for all future Zelda titles, that doesn't exactly mean it's perfect. Personally, I think it comes really close, but it had some real glaring issues that I can't ignore. Well, that is what today's video is all about. 5 things Breath of the Wild got wrong. And after this bad boy, part 3 of the series will come out and close it out. If you haven't seen part 1, 5 things Breath of the Wild got right, click the top right corner and check out the description box for the vid. And this time around, I'm gonna shake it up a bit because I got a buddy along for the ride. Please welcome Commonwealth Realm. So without further ado, let's get into number 5 without any particular order. Now, say what you will about water and underwater and water dungeons, yada yada yada, but having explorable and integrated water sections in Zelda games and video games not only give much more to traverse, it adds an additional level of verticality and can mystify players with treasures and dangers that await in the deep. Breath of the Wild was missing that out of the crazy explorable Hyrule they provided. Now I understand that the way the game is built in certain regards forced it into putting underwater sections of the game on the back burner, such as enemies on the surface, a connection to the sea, among others, but Breath of the Wild could have had a better use of water, especially considering that Zoras were a full force in this title. And you know, I really miss traditional fishing too.
The Wind Waker gets a pass due to the overall theme of the game being located in a massive ocean. But even then, technically, we do go underwater for a very specific section of sunken Hyrule. In this day and age in 3D gaming, water really shouldn't act as a barrier in environments, especially when we have an abundance of aquatic life.
While I do see a good reasoning why Breath of the Wild had to address this use of water, the way they did doesn't particularly make it right. And in my take, this is one thing the game got wrong. The use of cooking in this game was interesting and even fun to experiment with, but unless you're playing Master Mode every time, the meal system was incredibly overpowered. Ingredients to create meals were abundant, and it was not hard at all to find places to cook them in. While meals that give you certain stat boosts were the closest thing to being balanced in this game, the health-focused food definitely weren't, especially the meals that afforded you yellow health, and the fact that you can eat them within the safety of a pause menu, and you can eat and eat and eat to your heart's content without a full function is pretty broken.
This goes without saying that the meal section within inventory is awfully big, allowing you to hold numerous and various meals and potions. Back in our day, we had a very limited amount of bottles, and the meal section is aside from the ingredient section that can also be used to replenish your health.
For me, it really tears down the difficulty in certain segments of the game and makes you, the player, feel too safe, and that is why I feel the meal system in Breath of the Wild is something they got wrong. When you think about it, though the enemies were abundant in Breath of the Wild, the variety really wasn't. You take an enemy, divide it among the elements and classes, and that's about it. Even the bosses, I mean, I can almost count the standard set of enemies with 2 hands. We had Keys, Bokoblins, Moblins, Lozoflos, Wizrobes, Lynels, Choo-Choos, Guardians, Octoroks, Yiga, Stones, Hinoxes, Moldulgas. Yeah, that's about it. And all the bosses, save for Koga and Mr. DLC over here, we just got a repurposed form of Gani. Like, we got no Darknuts, no Redeads, no Poes, no Babas, no Skachulas, no Dodongos, no huge arrow-dependent enemies like Aeroflows or Kagaroks.
It's true that given the amount of enemies and the adaptive AI proved to be an enjoyable challenge when facing these foes. Running into the same enemies over and over again in this huge world did get a little bit repetitive. And the enemies, though they were no pushover, but a simple variation in class and element, didn't exactly set them apart too much.
In a game and in a world this big, you would think we could have more enemy variety types, but I guess given the scope and how the elements play an important role in this title, the variation of each of these enemy types had to make up the difference, right? I hope there's something that's bypassed in the next title because the enemy variety is something Breath of the Wild got wrong. In the previous episode, I talked about how the depth of the story was something Breath of the Wild got right. Well, everything surrounding the aspect of the story wasn't right, as the presentation of the story was not right. The story was fragmented all over the place, and it was bound to have context missing due to when you could potentially obtain a memory, and thus would be harder to digest and understand when acquiring it. While I understand the game is open world and there can only be so much linearity on that end, that will still allow it to be as such, there are ways to get around that, but boy do we go in way better detail on this particular segment over on Commonwealth Rum's video.
Breath of the Wild was an amazing game, but we don't hold back on addressing on some of the major issues of the game. And one of these is how Nintendo addresses the story in a game of this magnitude, which definitely needs work and looking into for the next title, and we have plenty to say that can help.
Check out that particular video in the link in the description box below and at the end of the video. Either way, the presentation on the story is something Breath of the Wild got wrong. Oh boy, I can rant about this for days. The final boss and overall villain of Breath of the Wild was incredibly lacking, not only in a design boss fights, but in its place within the game and overall story. Sure, it looks like it can walk the walk, but definitely doesn't talk the talk. Like literally it doesn't talk. You would think in the first fully voiced Zelda game that we'll have a villain with a dope self-assertive motive and have a fully voiced, I don't know, Ganondorf? But nope. I mean, Calamity Ganon's design overall looked cool, especially that snake ghost boar thing that we never got to fight, and the mechanical primordial monstrosity that we saw before the Dark Beast Ganon fights. It looked awesome. The boss fight themselves though, utterly lacking, especially that Dark Beast Ganon fight. That was so trash. Talk about weak. Because, you know, a huge contributing factor to help cementing how great a hero is or could be is what they're up against. That is what we call sometimes a foil.
With Breath of the Wild being the evolution of what we know on the Zelda series, it was a given that some form of Ganon was going to play a role in the game. While the legend surrounding the Calamity was something we have come to understand, the application of this entity in the game truly fell flat at the climax. Sure, technically we have been fighting a form of Ganon throughout the entirety of the game when looking at Malice, but for all of that to lead to what we faced at the end, it wasn't exactly satisfying.
What I think hurts more is that this boss, this entity, was really hyped up all the way from E3 2016, and then this is what we got. Yikes. Yeah, Breath of the Wild got a lot of things right, but in this huge case, it got the final boss and villain wrong. Is there anything else you feel Breath of the Wild got wrong? Leave it in the comment section below. Next week we'll tackle the last part in this 3-part video series. What is it exactly? Well, you're gonna have to wait until next week. Big thanks to Commonwealth Rum for joining me on this video, and be sure to check out our other video on his channel. Check it out in the link in the description box below, and until the next video, be sure to like, favorite, share, and most importantly, subscribe to HMK for more Zelda content. Until the next one, I've been HMK, and I'll check you guys later.